most cases, when we go into organizations, we find PMs already using AI. That's not new news. It's the question is what they use it for. And in most cases, we find out they maybe use it for 3 or 4 tasks, like writing emails, summarizing documents, maybe a little bit of brainstorming, a few things here and there. And in my opinion, that is like using a Ferrari and using it for a paperweight. And so the first thing that one person do is they take AI and use it for across the entire product lifecycle. Hey, thanks for having me. Mustafa Kapadi. I'm actually a CPO turned AI consultant. And what I do is I actually help product teams figure out how to use AI to be more effective and productive. I've been in product and innovation for the last 20 years. Most recently, I was a head of product at Google, where we actually build accelerators all throughout the world for Googlers and clients to come together. And before that, I was actually ran IBM's product and innovation management consulting practice. And about 2 years ago, figured out that, you know what, I need to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And that's when I actually started this practice in really helping what I almost start off like a fluke in actually helping product managers figure out how to use AI. And ever since then, it's been busy as hell. So it's good to be here.
Yeah, I think I'll just jump right into it then. You've had a ton of experience at some of the top tier tech firms, and AI is this new disruptive technology.
Yeah.
Like, for a lot of people seen as an existential threat. I've heard stories of senior engineers, PMs just
Yeah.
opting out of the industry altogether. They're like, there's no way. Like there's no way I'm going to be able to adapt to this. What are some anti patterns that you've noticed as AI has started to dominate our work lives?
That's a great question. It's a good place to start too. I think we have really two camps, to be honest with you, right? The first camp is all into AI and they are using AI heavily. That's what I call the top 1%. And the way they use AI is fundamentally different than most other people. Um, on the other end, you actually have the AI skeptics, right? And they want to keep AI at arm's length. Part of it is because they're afraid of, or there's a fear about what AI can do. Maybe they're fear about job security. Maybe they're fear about that AI is, going to outsource too much of the thinking to AI. And so you have these two camps, and then of course everybody's in the middle, was trying to figure out where to go and what to do. And so if you think about those three camps, I apologize. Everybody has a different relationship with the way they use AI, if that makes sense. With the middle camp, and you're really talking about they want to use AI, but they don't really know how to use AI. They're doing surface level stuff. But the first camp, like I said, is they're all into AI. They use AI first for everything. They start every task with an AI. And the third camp is really about let's put the brakes on, right? Let's figure out what this is. Let's make it safe. Let's make sure that we're not over risking things. And so they're really trying to opt out of it. And there's always this push and pull. Even when we go to organizations and clients, you'll see all three of them showing up in different ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. It's in my own words, it's the bullish early adopters. Usually when crypto was a thing, they were all into crypto. When VR was a thing, they were all into
Yeah.
VR. And then there's I wouldn't say like Luddites, but maybe Luddite adjacent on the other side. But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I'm
And
just trying to
yeah.
understand the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that most people are in the middle, but coming back to earlier conversation, I mean, we've had people in the third camp against technology for a very long time. Even
Mhm.
people who work in technology. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes they have the most pushback against new technology. When internet came about, there was a whole backlash. When mobile came out, there was a backlash. When crypto came about, there was a backlash. And so it takes some time for this part of the society to just get onto the program, right? And what really happens is that the first camp is really the ones that pushing the entire, in my case, client organization, or in our case, the entire society to start being more receptive to something like AI and being more acceptance of AI. And so it's over time, it eventually just takes over, right? How many people do you know right now that don't have a mobile phone?
It would take me a bit.
Exactly. I'm sure we'll find people who don't, but in reality, there was a big push, right? At a certain point in time in which these devices, we still have people in this camp in which they think devices are bad. And yes, like any good technology, it's amoral. It's not good or bad. It depends on how you use it.
Yeah, I hate my phone sometimes, and I've looked at like those minimalist phones, and I've thought
Yes,
about it. End of the day, I don't want to be the green bubble in the iMessage chat. That how
I
powerful
agree.
that green bubble is. Um, like right now, I use that brick product where it's like this physical like 3D printed brick that you have to like scan and it like locks all my apps and stuff. And
Nice.
it's just funny that I have to do that. But like I'm also starting to find myself look for like brick options for AI now because it's so
Mm.
powerful. And I got to a point where like I was using it for everything. And when I got to voice dictation, it got even, I wouldn't say like worse, but like more easy to just be like, oh, I could just like talk through this with an AI. And I still think like you talking to Claude and like having it like be a thought partner is a game changer for especially for
100%.
systems thinkers. But there is like this habit loop forming where like, hey, maybe stop, like get on my notebook, try to like get as far as I can first. But
Mm.
I don't know if that's like me being an old dog, like reluctant to learn new tricks, or maybe this is such a fundamental disruption to like how things are done, how thinking can be
Yeah.
done, that I'm just like holding myself back out of like fear that like,
So
yeah,
two things. One is at
yeah,
least, and there's people like you, there's definitely people who have the same thought process as you do. So number one is you're still using AI. It's just a matter of how you're using AI depends on your comfort level, right? As opposed to rejecting AI completely. And I've had clients in which they do the same thing. They actually first think things through and then they use AI to then help refine their thinking. There's others who then first start with a task of AI and saying, you know what, just give me all the options. And then they take a look at the options, they choose the options that they want, that they care about the most. And then they move forward with their own thinking and then they use AI to refine it. So their thought process is sandwiched between AI, if that makes sense.
mhm.
Um, and I don't think there's a right or wrong way, to be honest with you. I think the more important question is, does it help you become more creative, effective, innovative as a product manager? And if the answer is yes, then more power to you, right? Too many times people focus on the first part too much, like how I use AI, but they don't focus enough on what's the benefit and what's the impact to me and my organization. And I think you have to have both, right? Because one will inform the other. If the way you're using it is giving you the productivity, is giving you the impact of being a better or more effective PM, is allowing you to do things that you thought you could never do before, then that's great.
Yeah. So for you, what have you found to be the fastest way to get to? I guess I wouldn't say fastest, probably more effective way that you advise your clients, or do you evaluate like where their heads at and you recommend a more tailored response of like, oh,
100%.
depending on how this person thinks,
Yeah.
maybe I could see like someone that maybe doesn't come from like a creative field, accountants
Yeah.
or, finance folks that are reluctant to use AI. It's like, oh, start with AI first to get you through that like creative hump of like just generating ideas
Yeah.
and like narrowing down some options to evaluate first. For someone that me like comes from like a design background, it's like it's not that hard to like kill your darlings and like come up with ideas first and then identify like some paths forward and then use AI to like refine your thinking.
Yeah.
Is that like a pretty correct mental model for how you approach it?
Yeah. So first of all, let's just define what good looks like, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
let's talk about what's the best way to approach it. Because every client has a different model in mind. So in my opinion, and I'm going to talk about only at the product manager level, then we can talk about the organization level because the benefits of what good looks like or what that is a bit different. So as a PM, what I call the top 1% of PMs, how they use AI, I think that makes three things that make them the top 1%. The first is what they use AI for, right? So in most cases, when we go into organizations, we find PMs already using AI. That's not new news. It's the question is what they use it for. And in most cases, we find out they maybe use it for 3 or 4 tasks, like writing emails, summarizing documents, maybe a little bit of brainstorming, a few things here and there. And in my opinion, that is like using a Ferrari and using it for a paperweight, right? And so the first thing that the 1% do is they take AI and use it for across the entire product lifecycle,
Okay.
right? So basically anything that you can think of in a product lifecycle, there's ways that AI can help you enhance that process, right? Not, and I say enhance and augment, not replace and not replicate. And I think and so basically from a product management perspective, because that's what we focus on, is that really is the key. So that's number one is just what they use AI. Second one is how they use AI. And this is really where you'll see the top 1% use different tools for different things, go depth into building digital twins and synthetic users. They'll end up building prototypes. All of these new capabilities that they never had before, they use AI to help them enhance and build a better product. Right. And we can go deeper into how it looks like too. And the third is really a mindset piece, right? And the mindset piece is really this idea that I should be an AI first person, where what can I do with AI? I know enough about AI's benefits and limitations. I know how to make it sing and dance. And that mindset piece is very important because that's an AI first mindset. Every task starts with an AI, or every task has an AI component in it. And let me figure that out. So when you think about that, it's just about what do you use it for, how you use it, which is fundamentally different than most people. And then the whole mindset. Even if an example of a mindset is not all large language models are the same. So I personally myself will use ChatGPT for something, Claude for something else, Gemini for something else, NotebookLM for something else, and so on and so on. And so that is how I define what the top 1% do. And so when we go into organizations, um, one of the first things we do is we help organizations articulate what good looks like, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and in order to do that, after that, we actually do we do a deep assessment to then figure out where is your organization right now if this is what the North Star is. And that's how we usually start our engagements. Does that make sense or does that help?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to zoom in on what you said about having a tool belt of different models and having the ability to evaluate which models do better for certain tasks. Whenever I hear someone talk about like how awesome like AI is, but they just say, "Oh, okay, we got like enterprise accounts for just ChatGPT."
Yeah,
It's an indication that I wouldn't say that they fell for anything, but it's like, oh, they picked the most well marketed
exactly.
entrant to the
Yeah.
market. And I personally like, and I'm not like a huge fan of like OpenAI because I feel like it like fabricates a lot of content, even with all my efforts to keep it tight. I think like abstractions on top of the API, like not going right into the chat, like the Dia browser is a great example. They use the OpenAI APIs, and I feel like the outputs are pretty good, but their system prompts are pretty strong. Claude's always going to be good, better for writing. But then there's also interaction models, right? Like the script, like they've already abstracted out all of like the hard, like
Yeah.
thinking, and you just have to press a button and it does a task pretty reliably. I've also noticed that like the top 1% of people that are really leveraging AI is they understand the value of a system prompt.
Yes. 100%. In fact, one of the skills when we talk about the how is really trying to figure out how you ask questions in AI or how you ask AI questions, because the way you ask questions is directly correlated to the quality of responses that you get, right? And how we ask questions is a simple way. The fancy way is called prompt engineering. Um, but if you know how to ask questions to AI, you can get a lot with just starting to a generic large language model, right? It really depends on how comfortable you are with having a much more structured way of asking questions, as opposed to just saying, hey, write me a user story or help me brainstorm features. If you do that, AI will answer. Here's the good thing and the bad thing about AI is if you ask it a question, it will give you an answer, but it may not be the best answer. But if you change the way you ask, right? And we have something called a 5 keys model, and I call it the 5 keys to unlock great responses from AI. And if you use that consistently, you're actually, if you use that religiously, then you'll most likely get a high level response or high quality response. That may even surprise you. So it
Yeah,
really comes down to the how piece.
yeah, sharing like at a high level what those 5 keys are
Yeah. So
to
the five
yeah.
keys usually is so let's just say that they come down to number one is you have to assign AI role. So, for example, let's say that let's go back to the user story one because I think it's much more important. It becomes more real when we actually talk about something concrete. So you can assign a role, and you can say you have the most experience in great products. You are world class, or you're best in building user stories or creating user stories. Right. So that's the role, and the reason to do that is because what you're doing is you're really priming the engine to focus on product management and user stories. The second part of that is really giving it input. And when I think about input, you're really giving information to AI on what I call first principles. First principle is what's the problem you're solving? Who's the user? What's the user benefit? What's the feature that you think about building or epic that you're building the user story for? What's the outcome that you want from, and what's the user benefit? So when you go back to first principles, and if that's your input, again, that gives AI a nice canvas to then generate some great user stories. The third key is what I call instructions. And instructions is where you put all the best practices in about how to write user stories. All the things you and I learned about how to write good user stories or the things that you can find in on the internet, you put in here. You want them to be customer focused. You want them to be unique. You want them to be technical free, so on and so forth. So that's key number three. Key number four is really the format that you want it in. So you want all user stories to come in as a user. I want to be able to do this so that I can do that. And the fifth key is really around giving it a good example. And what good example does is it ties all the 4 keys that you have above into an example. And so when you take those 5 keys, which is assign a role, provide a first principle inputs, give it the instructions, the best practices about how to write user stories, give it the format that you need it to be in, and then give it an example to codify all those 4 things, you're usually going to get into highly relevant user stories. But there's a caveat to that one. Even if AI gives you 10 great user stories that are relevant, that doesn't mean that you take all 10. What it means is you take the 1, 2, or 3 that resonate the most to you. And so this is where you can talk about how the top 1% use AI to come up with a list of ideas. And then they use their own quote unquote PM thinking, their own experience, their own context to then figure out which is the 1 or 2 user stories they're going to move forward with. And that idea is what I call human AI synergy or human AI optimization. That's really the place that you want to play, right? You're not outsourcing your thinking to AI. You're not taking all 10 user stories, but you're using AI to prime you to come up with ideas and then pick the 1 or 2 user stories that make sense and then move forward, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to start from zero anymore when there's a
No,
great way to provide context and get signal. And the mental model for me when I'm talking to like PMs and designers about AI, especially people that are reluctant, is that think of this as a way to get speed to signal. Like people talk about signal versus noise.
yeah,
And I when people think that like when you have signal, you have like a finished like spec. No,
yeah,
signal is just like it's a clue, it's a lead to better work. but then
Yeah.
eventually had to like write the spec from that single. So it's like this is a tool to like help you get the single faster. It's not there to do the job for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I found that, and this is a Thinking Out Loud podcast, but what I found about the whole like first principles thinking is that why do we do first principles thinking in the first place? And it's really imposing creative constraints, like assuming that this thing is true, that's going to limit the outputs of our thinking
Yes.
to just focus on what those first principles
Yeah.
are. Nate Jones, who has a pretty fantastic newsletter on Substack, he did an analysis of all the system prompts that were, I guess, leaked. I don't know if they were leaked or not, but for like Perplexity, Cursor, and the big observation that he found was that 90% of it was edge cases, like what not to do. And
Yeah.
it wasn't too prescriptive beyond like format of like what they wanted the AI to do. It's like, no, like there's benefits to like hallucinating in a creative way as long as you constrain the values. And yeah,
Yeah. So that's exactly what you're doing with the 5 keys is that you're
yeah,
giving it enough context
yeah,
without actually being prescriptive. What unfortunately happens with most PMs is that when they're writing features or user stories, they usually already have some ideas in the mind, right? "Ah, I need to build this feature, this user story needs to look like this," and so on and so forth. And so they have already in their mind start off not with first principles,
yeah,
right? And so that's why you see some user stories, even when I was CPO at IBM or at Google, I used to see some user stories. I'm like, this is just a bunch of technical jargon put together in a story format, right? We're not really talking about the user or the problem or what the impact is if we do this. And so you can see that come through because first principles were not used to build that user story. This enforces a level of discipline that says, okay, I do need to start, even though I think I know about the user, I need to put that in. And then the LLM is going to give me ideas and options that I may have never thought about. And that's going to inform me to make a better decision. And so it's not just what you said earlier. It's not just about starting from a blank page or being faster. It ultimately turns out to be helps you make better decisions. Because as a PM, our entire job, if I had to boil it down, is to make better decisions so we can end up building better products, right? And so to me, it really comes down to is AI helping you do that or not? And it comes down again to how you use AI, right? And so the more you practice it, the more you get to this point in which like, okay, I can now focus on the bigger picture. I can focus on the first principles. I can think about it differently. That will help me ultimately build a better.
yeah. Like Shreyas Doshi talked about like what makes a successful like product manager or product person, anybody in that like the job families in that department. And some people will be like really good at user stories, right? Really great specs and PRDs are ruthlessly prioritized, all the
Yeah.
jargon, the keywords. And it came down to my interpretation of his answer. So I'll abstract it out, because I don't want to share too much from that awesome course they did. But my interpretation of that whole discussion was its reputation, right? It's like the great PMs have a great reputation in the org because they're usually right. They make good decisions. No one really cares like how much documentation they do because like once it gets to like a design spec, people kind of ignore the PRD. They just look at
Yeah.
the designs. And so it's more about their ability to influence in the right direction and things just happening, things going well when they're involved in a project. And so I've noticed that AI just enhances and like reveals more of who you already are rather than
Yeah.
makes you better, right? It just exponentially increases. Like if you think that's just your job is to make awesome user stories and specs, you're PM that believes that they're just going to be outputting more documentation.
And I think AI can actually help in both sides of the spectrum, right? But yeah, it is good to actually have a good reputation. And I love Farias and I have a lot of respect for him. I don't know if that's the number one job of a PM is to have a good reputation. A good reputation is a result of doing good PM work and building great products. I don't think so that's the goal. But to come back to the earlier point that you talked about is that if you're just starting off as a PM, AI can actually help you build all the years of experience, right? And put that in your work, and it has to show in your work, right? If you're an experienced PM, you can now think about second order effects that are usually quite hard for PMs to think about, right?
Yep.
Even experienced PMs have a hard time thinking about what if we do this, what is the competition going to do? Or if we are going to build this module, how much should we price it and what are the users going to think and so on and so forth. And so you have to, depending on the way you are on the spectrum of your experience, your use of AI is going to be different, but it's all going to be there to enhance you to become a better PM, which in my mind comes back to, again, making better decisions that will lead you to better products, right? Even this idea about user stories, because I think user stories are an important part, is that you can write user stories with the AI, but to me, that's not enough, right? You can then figure out what are the gaps in the user stories that you already have, and AI can help you fill that gap. You can think about the user story and saying, if I'm going to present these user stories to my engineering managers or designers, what are the questions they're going to have? And how can I enhance that, right? How can this user story work out if based on the stack that we have, our tech stack? Is it even feasible? There's just so much that you can do, even with a simple concept like user stories, that will help you present your ideas in a way that will make it much more easier for the organization to accept it, right? Coming back to the idea about building a better product. And if you build a better product, your reputation is going to take care of itself.
Mhm.
But you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, and the diagnosis for why a reputation is good versus bad could be different for every PM because it's such a high leverage job. It could be
Yeah.
for a lot of different reasons. Could be interpersonal
100%.
skills, yeah,
100%.
like time planning. And so it's not the most actionable advice. I will be the first to admit that. And figuring out like what good reputation is for a PM is a personal journey. But what I love about what you're saying is that it if execution of the documentation and just formatting artifacts is faster, you have more time to think. And what I've noticed with like using similar principles to what you've just described is role chaining. So when I'm going into Claude and giving it like a system prompt with 2 to 3 roles, where, and I got this idea from when I was working at the school paper at the university I went to. And when I worked at school paper, this is way before AI, and I was a staff writer. I had an editor paired with me, so my job wasn't to like edit my articles. My job was to produce content
Yeah.
and like be right for the most part. And then the editor, their job was to enforce editorial style guides, get it to a certain character limit, and like work with me to like trim it down into a
Yep.
deliverable article. And I just thought, okay, even before AI, like newspapers who've been around for hundreds of years
Have
figured out this
you
best
Yeah.
practice. And so in a system prompt, you could have like an editorial role for like the PM. So like your job is to just give it context and content and like what you're thinking and give
Yeah.
it the role of like a editor or like a business journalist that's like asking you like probing questions. And to the extent my system prompts make it very mean. Like one time I was just like kind of going back and forth and it's just like, yeah, but you're not answering the question. And I'm just like, okay, I'm done, Claude. And like, pissed me off a little bit, but I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm getting it closer to like a human counterpart that pisses me off
Yeah.
of like, yeah, I got to go think about this more. And then
Well,
turning it into
I
a
would, yeah.
writer.
So
Yeah.
first of all, I think using
Yeah.
AI to take on different
Yeah.
roles is important. And I think it's one of those new capabilities that we just never had right before. I would actually recommend that the next time you do it, take it further, right? Don't just give it a system prompt. Create a synthetic editor. And when you have a synthetic editor, bring in the personalities of the best editors that you can think of, and then use that as a sparring partner. And so don't limit to just system prompts. There's so many other ways that you can do this. For example, we have a client right now in which we are helping them build synthetic user. They have this. You're a designer, you know this. You have tons of data of market research that's
Yeah.
probably sitting somewhere on your laptop or somewhere on a system, right? How do you take that market research and make it more actionable?
Yeah.
How do you take something in which you've spent hours understanding the user, understanding how they think and how they behave, and give it to somebody in sales or somebody in marketing or somebody in product or anywhere else? And the best way to do that, or one of the best ways to do that, is to build a synthetic persona or a synthetic user or a customer. And so the next time product has a question, they can ask the synthetic user to get a different point of view. Now, a synthetic user, just to be fair, does not replicate or replace talking to a real user. But in those crazy questions that you want to ask, just like how you're using the editor, it's a great way to help refine your thinking. A salesperson, which is what this company wants to do, they want to give synthetic users to salespeople so that they can actually practice objection handling and say, I'm about to do this proposal. What are the things that I should think about based on this synthetic persona? So they have built synthetic personas of their buyers.
How did Facebook make billions? Like even before AI, they made like these psychological profiles based off of user data.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
this is not new news, right? This is
yeah.
just a way that now the power at the individual level never
Hmm.
before. And to me, this is where the top 1% are different. We talk a lot about the how, right? This is one of the hows about how they use AI fundamentally different. We have a client who is now thinking about building a synthetic competitor.
Oh, I never
So
thought about that.
think about it this way. You're in a marketplace, you're a SaaS company, you have competitors all around you. Build a synthetic profile of that competitor and then think about second order thinking about, if I drop my price, what is this competition going to do?
Especially in like the public sector. You put in S1 filings.
100%.
Yeah.
And again, none of this means that this is exactly what the competition is going to do, but it forces you to think
Hmm.
and make better decisions. This new feature, again, it's a feature that my competition already has, right? How is that? How are the two comparing? What else can the competition do so that my feature becomes less valuable in the marketplace? If I know that, then I can design around it even before the competition realizes what you're doing. So you can do these second order type of thinkings and war games that were never possible.
Yeah, not without a ton of resources. Like what you're really like touching on is like really good decision making requires the ability to simulate.
Yeah.
And now it's never been easier for an
Yeah.
individual to simulate
Yeah.
like different potential outcomes.
This is why I'm so excited. This is why I get so excited with our product management and AI. There's a lot of other roles that AI has an impact on, but fundamentally, PMs are dev people because we build things. And in
Mhm.
order for us to build things, it's all about making these micro decisions all throughout the journey, right? And AI
Yeah.
just enhances that process.
And they're the things that they don't really talk about in business memoirs, all the micro decisions. They just talk about like the big macro events that they attribute their success. But
100%.
it's like the decision on who to lay off because you have to do one. Like
Yeah.
it's and
Yeah.
making sure that you don't fire that one team member that like is critical
Yes.
to success. And then in the best cases, like what market segment
Yeah.
makes the most sense? And like how do you position your product and like what would happen if I positioned it this way or this way based off that synthetic user?
Yeah.
And I mean, jobs to be done is like the whole assumption there is that if you find a really good market segment and you've identified the correct jobs to be done, you can simulate potential reactions to
Yes.
your product.
Yes. And that's the way that is really a new superpower that we've never had before. And we're fundamentally going to shift the way we work, and I think PMs are going to be on the forefront of it. And if you think about it, the role of the PM itself is gonna change fundamentally. Yes, we've talked about how they use AI and how and all the things we've talked about in just in the last hour or 30 minutes. But in reality, if you think about it, we're getting into a world where building things is going to become easier and easier, right?
Yeah.
Software development is gonna get easier and easier. But do you know what gets harder and harder when everything becomes easier to build?
Is breaking through the noise.
Yes. And to add to that, deciding what to build.
Huh.
When you can build anything, deciding what to build becomes a much tougher decision. And so that to me is where PMs are going. In fact, that's one of the reasons, and this is going to sound contrarian to a lot of your to listeners. I think you're going to need more PMs, not less. Because suddenly, when you can build anything, you need to go back and figure out what to build and what not to build, right?
Yeah. When
We are at this current moment in time,
you
you
know,
have, depending on where you are in the organization or type of organization they're in, you have PMs who are basically, unfortunately, order takers. The business decides, they turn that into requirements and hand it off to engineering. And the reason they do that is because they're basically a translation engine within what the business says and what the engineering wants. But when building becomes easier and easier, deciding what goes to engineering and what not goes to engineering and working with the business to figure out what is going to make an impact, because it always comes back to impact. That's the job of a PM. And I think we're going to need more of them and not less.
yeah, my engineering manager was telling me that, his son's in college right now and he's doubling down on AI education, smart kid. And instead in his CS degree, that's like where he's going all in on
Yeah.
that. And he's showing his dad like the homework, and it's mostly like he just looks at it and it's all about giving like context, like setting up system prompts. And he's like, it's basically PM work. Yeah, like you're like it's the engineers need to like you need more product management competencies. Like I wouldn't say it's too contrarian because right, it's like you can't hide behind just tactical building
Yeah.
anymore. Like like being a
Well,
feature
no, I
factory.
mean, but
Yeah.
you'll tell me
Yeah.
when I first voiced this about almost a year and a half ago, people were all up in arms, right? And so
Yeah.
now it's becoming more and more popular. And coming back to your point, a lot of the times when we go into our organizations, we actually highly recommend, sometimes they almost insist that you need to have your engineering managers as part of the program or the transformation. Because some of the best engineering managers make the best PMs,
Hmm.
right?
And I've been encouraging designers
Yeah. And
like,
designers too, by the way. So
no,
yes, I apologize.
yeah.
We highly recommend that you get all three into the room when we kick off the transformation. Right. And really is a transformation because we take them through a whole bunch of steps that is change management, there's transformation, there's process for engineering. There's a whole bunch of things that you need to do to make this vision come true. But you can't just do it alone. You can't just do it with PMs or POs. You have to get everybody on the bus.
Yeah. And it should be exciting for most people. I know a lot of listeners are probably like
Yes.
worried. It should be exciting, and it totally depends on how your leadership like embraces it. Some people have a reductionist point of view of like, oh, I could do more with less, protect my
Yeah.
margin, spreadsheet math. But like the best like product leaders are like, cool, I could do more with more people,
Yes.
and I could expand like the capacity of folks. I guess my last question before we move into like the final like round of questions is there are individuals that like what's the success rate of like I know that part change management is sometimes getting people off the bus.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't always work that like everyone like gets on board. Like how and I know this is probably an impossible question to answer, but like how often in your client engagements do some people, you just find out that they're maybe not in the right mind
Yeah.
headspace to like,
I think it is a hard question to answer. Unfortunately, I don't know if I actually have data, but I will usually tell you that I usually subscribe to the 20-60-20 rule,
mm,
in which 20% of the organization is going to take the AI like fish to water. The other 20% goes back to our conversation earlier, is there is in the camp in which they will resist AI or will barely use AI. And then the 60% is usually where you want to influence. That's the people stuck in the middle. And what you want to do is you want to pull them towards the top 1%, right? I'll give you some real life examples. So we just finished an engagement with a client. It's a SaaS company that had about 60 to 100 PMs. When I first started it and we actually did a quick inventory of how they're using AI, I think they were using the things that came up was maybe 4 or 5 popular use cases, right?
yeah,
At the end of our program, the team itself had identified over 250 or almost 300 use cases that they want to use AI. Now, I think that's fantastic because once you help people understand and see what AI can do, you get them over the fear of AI. It's amazing how much creativity it unlocks. And even if you're 80% of the organization, the 20 and the 60, right, are using it for 250 plus tasks, the other 20% who are resisting it, it really does not have a material impact.
and it might unlock them to go towards the middle.
It
Yeah,
will, because I
yeah,
don't think so. This is one of those things in which you can resist for a long time, right?
yeah,
This ship has sailed, or whatever you want to use. The train has
mm,
left the station, whatever analogy you want to use, it is
yeah.
happening, right? And now the only question as a PM is that where do you want to be? Do you want to be in the driver's seat? Do you want to be in the passenger seat? Or do you want to be in the caboose in which you're being dragged? And I would also tell you that if you're a PM and you're ambitious, which most PMs are, which is why I love them so much, this is the best time to differentiate yourself because organizations are dying. I'm telling you, they're dying for PMs who can come in and show an AI first mindset and an AI first working model because they just don't know what that is. Most of the time, when we get into engagements, we spend a lot of time just helping leadership define what good looks like, right? Coming back to what we earlier said. And I prefer not to talk about what good looks like. I prefer to show them what good looks like. Because you and I can talk about it. Oh, yes, it's great to talk about how you use AI is different and what you use AI for different and the mindset is different. But unless we actually show it to them and we show them what a good PM is with AI, that's when they're like, okay, like how fast can we move? How fast can we get here?
Yeah, seeing is believing.
Yes.
Mustafa, do you feel like there is anything that hasn't been said that should be said before we sign off? And how can people find your
Well,
work?
this is, first of all, thank you for the time. This has been great. There's a lot. To be honest with you, we've just skimmed the surface. There's so much we can go in, so much depth we can go into. And I would highly recommend if people want to learn more about this, I have a Substack as well. Just go to my Substack. I'm sure we'll put it somewhere in the show notes. Or you can just go to my website that takes you directly to the Substack, which is echo-point.com. And you can learn a lot from there. And my philosophy is I give away like 95% of what I tell my clients for free. So if you just want to level yourself up, feel free to go there, join the Substack. It's completely free. And you'll get it. You'll learn something. I promise you'll learn something that will help you become a better PM.
Well, you just got a new subscriber in me. Consider me intrigued. Yeah, I need to go find those synthetic user articles that you have. And I
Yes.
agree. And any product leaders engage in Mustafa's services because, yeah, like the reason it's like such a great strategy to give 95% away is that it's not the knowledge that is the value of engaging a consultant. It's the solutions architecture. It's like hiring a tailor to give you a tailored suit.
Yeah.
And I'm very intrigued to see where you go with
Yeah.
this new part of your journey. And I
No,
thank you
I think
so
that's
much for the
great.
time.
One other thing I'll add is that we have just finished the industry first benchmarking study in which I have interviewed
Oh,
probably up to 50 or 60 CPOs to
wow.
figure out how they're using AI, what's blocking them, what's the maturity, and so on and so forth. So we're going to drop that study probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And again, it's on Substack. So if you're a product leader and you want to just figure out where you fall against your peers and how the top 1% are using it, that's a good. Download the benchmarking study once it's available. It's a great resource.
I'll
Right?
make sure to include it in the show notes when this is released, which
That'd
usually
be
takes
great.
about two months anyway. So
And
go to the show
apparently
notes.
they are. Yeah.
Yeah, rush over. All right. Mustafa, thanks so
Okay.
much for coming on the show. You have a good one.
Perfect. Thank you.